days out from the general elections of September 3. And in the campaign at this stage is the battle over the competing tax plans of the two major political parties. The campaign is at this point where it's really a contest now for the undecided people. And income tax is a big issue for them. And as we have been reporting, and it's in the papers this morning, I think the Observer captures it best. Income tax battle. JLP, PNP seek to woo voters with disparate plans ahead of debate on economy. That debate is on tonight. Yes, in the second of three national debates. And it's going to be focused on the economy. This is the Gleaner's headline: Income tax caution. Large fiscal deficit means proposed policies by JLP and PNP would need careful rollout, economist warns. That economist is Keenan Faulkner, who you hear from time to time here on Nationwide. Yeah. And Mr. Faulkner told us yesterday that estimates by his calculations of the PNP's promise to increase the income tax threshold to $3.5 million could cost the country more than $70 billion. $70 billion. And, all of the plans you're hearing now, we must ask them, how much will it cost? How are you going to finance it? Are you going to finance it from increased revenues? Are you going to have to cut some other program to do it? Or will you have to raise taxes, increase taxes to do it? Yeah? Anyone you hear come now, you must ask them. Don't let them get away with it by telling you something that sounds good, but they can't tell you how they're going to implement it because they can't finance it. Yes? And Keenan Faulkner told us yesterday that, listen, for every $100,000 increase in the income tax threshold, it means that the government will have to find $4 to $5 billion to allow you to get that increased 100,000 in your threshold. Listen to him.
Over the last, the increase in the threshold from 1.5 to 1.7, that cost $9 billion. 1.7 to 1.8 cost $4.8 billion. 1.8 to 1.9 cost $4.73 billion. 1.9 to 2.0 million cost $4.44 billion. So each band of 100,000, you basically more or less gives up $4 to $5 billion in revenue. And if you extrapolate that, all things being equal, then a 3.5 million threshold could potentially cost anywhere between 60 and 75 billion.
You heard that? Between 60 and 75 billion dollars. And that does not include the other proposals from the PNP. And by their own estimation, those promises could cost $36 billion more. Yeah? But the party has been saying that it will implement all its proposals in a fiscally responsible manner. It has also said it will not impose new taxes to finance the promises. According to the PNP, it expects organic growth in the economy to help to finance its shopping list of promises. But Keenan Faulkner says he believes the proposal will take some time to implement.
I think, towards the end of a new 5-year parliamentary term might be the earliest that you can start to phase it in, and you probably do that over 2 or 3 years, and then that now moves into the next parliamentary term after 2030.
So in other words, The PNP can't do this in the first year when it comes to power, nor the second year, nor the third year. According to Keenan, they need about 3 years to see how the growth, the organic growth that they speak of, if that materializes, and give them the fiscal space to do it. Yeah? So don't be fooled now by all the promises you're getting from both sides. Because as we hear from Executive Director of the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, Dr. Damien King, both parties, the JLP and the PNP, must explain to the Jamaican people how they intend to finance their tax proposals.
That is the question. That is the question that both parties have to answer. Okay? Nobody, nor the fiscal responsibility framework, allows us to run large fiscal deficits. Both parties have to say where the revenue is coming from. That determines the impact of what they are suggesting. And until that is offered, then there's no basis on which to make a decision.
There you go. So the PNP is saying increase the threshold to $3.5 million. The JLP has said it is planning to slash over on a phased basis the personal income tax rate from 25% to 15%. Yeah? Over the next term of government, 5 years. It says this, as I said, will be done in a phased way, but it hasn't given us the costing. When you slash the rate from 25% to 15%, how much revenue are you now giving up? And I hope that this question is put to Favour Williams and the JLP team tonight in the national debates. Yes? This is a question they must answer, or should be asked to answer. Yeah? Now, this $3 million income tax threshold coming from Mark Golding and the PNP, they've been talking about this for some time and flip-flopping and ducking on it, you know. Yes? Remember, it was 2023, Mark Golding first said, listen, the income tax threshold should move to well in excess of $2 million. Yeah? And then he said 3 million. Well, our parliamentary reporter, yes, Siobhan Campbell, yes, has been following this closely. Yeah, and he dealt with it on his What's on My Mind this morning. And I'm going to play that for you. Yes, because I think Siobhan did a damn good job in tracing back, yeah, the timelines that led to us hearing now from the PNP an income tax threshold of $3.5 million.
Listeners, elections are upon us, and as expected, promises, promises, and more promises. This in itself is not unusual, for as the two political parties vie for control of Gordon House in a race that is quickly shaping up to be decided within the margins, in this kind of fierce competition, there will be a certain escalation in rhetoric. Well, cometh the man, cometh the hour, and Mark Golding, most likely noticing the tightening race, decided to pull from his opponent's previous playbook and announce an increase in the income tax threshold of $3.5 million. Now listeners, the irony is not lost on me on the reversal of positions, where it's the PNP insisting their proposal is not reckless, while the JLP is demanding answers as to how it should be funded. But that's not the focus of my concerns this morning. The fiscal prudence of this measure undoubtedly will be the topic of discussion for some time leading up to the elections, and I'll leave it to others to argue the merits or lack thereof. But a recent quote I've been ruminating on as part of my own self-reflection and improvement is, and I quote, "How you do something is how you do everything." I think that line very easily surmises the current People's National Party and its president Mark Golding. Let's reflect on Mr. Golding's constant back and forth with this matter of the income tax threshold. It started as far back as 2023, when Mr. Golding first put forward calls for the threshold to be adjusted, vowing that a future PNP government would ensure it was done. However, cometh the hour and the man was missing, when called upon to present a clear proposal as to how this would be accomplished. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark roundly mocked Mr. Golding for his failure to follow through during the budget debates of that year.
Madam Speaker, that is what happens when you have an opposition that makes a habit of unprincipled position. The expectations of them will always lead to disappointment. Because, Madam Speaker, when I explained that this move would cost nearly over $45 billion, all you could hear was silence. Mouth zip, not a peep. The opposition leader spoke for 2 hours and not one word about how he would fund an increase in the income tax threshold that cost over $45 billion. It seems to be the case, Madam Speaker, it seemed to me and to a reasonable person that this was a cynical ploy to get the attention of Jamaicans without any idea about how to sustainably finance it. They did not even know the cost.
This is particularly odd considering, according to Mr. Golding, a month before, suggesting to the Jamaican people this had all been worked out.
I've already said that I think there's a justification for the threshold being increased. We had proposed it in my presentation to our annual conference that it should be increased to $3 million to adjust for the inflation that has transpired since 2016 and to preserve the value of the benefit of the threshold that was then imposed, plus a buffer for some future inflation which is ongoing. We have our own plan as to how we'd finance this, but the government are in power and they need to say how they are going to finance it.
Fast forward to 2025, and when again called on to provide concrete funding arrangements for his proposal, Mr. Golding, he again waffled. Despite putting forward a raft of proposals for their budget debate presentations earlier in March, this matter of the income tax threshold was decidedly absent from the opposition's plans to rescue Jamaica. Days later, Mr. Golding went further to say that he felt the current planned increases already put forward by the government were, in his opinion, appropriate. His own proposal was now under review and at the time effectively shelved.
Well, it's under review. At this time, there have been some increases in the threshold, and we've seen the costings of it. Some of these things, when you don't have access to all of the information that the government has with the Ministry of Finance and literally a few thousand technocrats supporting their work. We don't have access to that. So we're anticipating further increases over time, but that's not part of the presentation that we made because it's already underway, and we are comfortable with that, but we'll keep it under review.
Now, a few months later, and today we have not only 3 million, but 3.5 million.
Now I hear the Labourites are talking about adjusting the rate of income tax, but that is going to benefit those who are very, very wealthy more than it will benefit those who are less wealthy, because the rate, once reduced for them, means that they will be paying less tax because they're earning more to begin with. We are going to deal with that matter in a way that benefits those who need it most. Under the PNP government that is to come, we will be increasing the tax threshold so that persons who currently pay tax at 25%, if they're earning up to $3.5 million a year, they will be paying tax at 0% under the next PNP government. We'll be raising the threshold to give them a tax-free income.
But additional clarity as to the implementation of that proposal would come a day later via opposition spokesman Julian Robinson. He sought to make it clear that this proposal was not likely to be implemented upon the PNP forming the next government, but may take some more time.
Well, we're currently in the middle of a budget year, and I would say the new fiscal year would start April 1st, and so the commitments that have been made would commence certainly in relation to the tax threshold at that time. We may make adjustments, and we may have to do supplementary budgets in terms of how you move expenditures within the current band, as has been done in the past.
And as I said, listeners, how you do one thing is how you do everything. This clarification is no different than the PNP's approach to the rural school bus program, which has been a rolling target of continued clarifications. There's also the increase in salaries for politicians, GCT on imported foods, increasing the length of school days, even Mark Golding's own response to concerns over his British citizenship, and the list could go on. It's actually harder to find a statement or utterance by the current slate of PNP spokespersons that did not require clarity within 24 to 48 hours of being placed in the public record. Even the PNP's newfound commitment to fiscal prudence may require future clarity. Just last week, a junior spokesman on finance, Cleveland Tomlinson, made heavy weather of the debt reduction and the benefits that will accrue from the nation sticking to the fiscal guidelines.
So when I hear them talking about we have brought down the debt,
as if it's an ingenuity on their part, as if they're some economic genius because they have been able to bring down the debt. What they should tell the people is that they were legally forced to do it because of the law that the People's National Party put in place in 2014. So when the debt reaches 60% of GDP, per the fiscal rules, we'll be able to relax or reduce the primary balance. And when you reduce the primary balance, it simply creates more fiscal space for the government. And through the creation of that fiscal space, we'll have more revenue room to finance our programs.
It's a shame he failed to bring this very important fact to the attention of his party leader back in 2022 when he chided the government of being too slavish to fiscal rules when the people needed more.
I would support additional expenditures of up to 2% of GDP to address the critical needs facing the society. That's about $40 billion. It is time to focus on helping our people. It is not the time for excessive fiscal conservatism.
It's interesting to hear now that the rapid reduction of the debt, according to Mr. Tomlinson, will allow the government of his party to accomplish so much more. This while forgetting that his party has repeatedly called on the government to stop this obsession with debt reduction and focus elsewhere. So, if this is how the opposition does something, is this how you would want a government to do everything? Listeners, this is not about the merit or demerit of increasing the income tax threshold. This isn't even about the ability to fund the measure. This is about a government supposedly in waiting being able to be taken at its word. As a government, your policy utterances affects markets, and it affects what ordinary people do in terms of their planning. And as I said, listeners, how you do something is how you do everything. It then becomes a question for voters as to whether you trust the opposition-turned-government not to require clarity at every turn. However, the government has fallen into the same trap. After lambasting the opposition for failing to provide proper costing for their manifesto promises, the Holness administration released its own manifesto without any notion of costing its programs. This is even more egregious due to no timelines for implementing the personal income tax rate reduction of 10 percentage points being provided. While the caveat has been given that this will be phased in as resources allow, the lack of concrete information is simply unacceptable. Both political parties are falling into old, well-worn paths of vague promises with lack of proper substance. That's what's on my mind.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Siobhan Campbell. Yes? He came with his receipts. And he delivered. Thank you so much, Siobhan Campbell. That was journalism at its best. Time for the break. Nationwide News played a clip from the PNP General Secretary this morning, Dr. Dayton Campbell. He made a speech on Sunday at the PNP's parish meeting in Mandeville, or it was more than a parish meeting, it was a Central Jamaica mass meeting. And I want you to listen carefully to what Dr. Campbell said. Essentially, he says the PNP will ensure that all its indoor agents are equipped with integrity lamps on election day to assess the IDs of voters. Listen to him.
I have taken a decision, and we have bought integrity lamps for every single constituency, so that we are going to train our indoor agents. Take up your integrity lamp, look at the voter ID, look to the security bar. Every single constituency that the PNP is putting up a candidate has been given their integrity lamp, so they can look at the ID to make sure that the necessary security features are there.
What is Dayton Campbell saying? He said, I have taken a decision to get these so-called integrity lamps to hand to PNP indoor agents to examine our IDs when we turn up at the polling station on Wednesday next week. No. Let me just tell you the facts. No party political indoor agent has any authority to question you when you turn up to vote next week, Wednesday. None whatsoever. And anyone who chooses to do so, firmly but courteously send them packing. Tell them, no, you have no such authority. When you go into the polling station, the only persons who have the authority to question your identification or your credentials, your eligibility as a voter, are the presiding officer and the poll clerks. And they will be clearly identified. The presiding officer and the poll clerks. Inside that polling station, it is the word of the presiding officer that carries. It is the presiding officer who is the authority to question your ID or to ask you any question or to instruct you. No other person. This is very serious, you know. It's your vote. So do not listen to the rubbish coming from the mouth of Dr. Dayton Campbell. It's absolute rubbish. If there's a problem when you turn up regarding your identity, there's a clearly established principle and practice and procedures. You have to take an oath, or as directed by the circumstances interpreted by the presiding officer. Nobody else. Absolutely nobody else. Worst of all, an indoor agent, whether from the PNP or from the GLP, as they're called, party indoor agents. Yeah? Indoor agents. Nothing more. They represent the interests of their parties, not the public. They represent the interests of the PNP and the GLP. They have absolutely no standing. And I don't know what is Dayton Campbell suggesting. Is he suggesting... Let me not put it that way. Let me just... those are the rules, okay? So nobody is to ask you anything. On your way in, when you get inside, deal with the presiding officer and the poll clerk. The poll clerk is virtually the assistant, the second in command to the presiding officer. If you have your ID, you go in with the ID and you hand it to the presiding officer. Nobody else. Nobody else. Rubbish. Now, back to the manifestos. The two political parties in the manifestos have spoken to the needs of the elderly, and the founder and executive chairman of the Caribbean Community of Retired Persons, CCRP, Jean-Laurie Chin, is commending the GLP and the PNP for including policies targeting senior citizens in their election manifestos. You're going to hear that after the break. Have been paying attention to the needs of senior citizens. Yes? The JLP has pledged to introduce significant tax breaks for seniors if it forms the next government. And the founder of CCRP, Jean Laurie Chin, has commended the two of them. Yeah? Here's what Jean Laurie said about the tax breaks for the seniors.
Very ecstatic. We actually had written 2 years ago to the Ministry of Finance for them to give us better tax breaks, and they did respond, and they did give us better tax breaks. But this is really beyond our dreams, and we are very grateful for it. But can I just say, I think this is the first time that I have seen both manifestos so focused on our seniors, and I'm very grateful. I have to mention, too, the digital inclusion that is mentioned by the PNP manifesto. I think that's a good idea. And the I Am Alive app that is in the JLP manifesto.
Yes.
Because, you know, people have to be running around now and getting their life certificate signed.
Jean Laurie Chin, the PNP in its manifesto is promising to expand and strengthen community-based programs to support the daily needs and well-being of older persons. Meanwhile, Mrs. Chin is calling for closed captioning to be included in the ongoing national debates to help the elderly who are hard of hearing.
It's one thing to have a signer, and we should have a signer for the deaf. But a lot of our elderly folks are getting hard of hearing, and they do not know how to sign. And therefore, I'm appealing to the stations who are carrying it to have closed captions, please, so that they can at least read what is being said. Because a lot of our elderly people do not understand signing. They were hearing right up until their older age, and now they're having problems with their hearing.
Jean Laurie Chin there, a good point. Many of us don't think about these things. But there are hundreds, thousands of Jamaicans who feel excluded when we don't have the closed captioning or the signing. And I gather there's an issue developing with the National Debates Commission, and one of our leading signers, her name is Tony Aiken. Tony Aiken? Antoinette Aiken, right? And you see her on your television videos